Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we go week to week watching one of your streaming favorites. On today's episode, my sister will be joining me discussing the two most recent episodes, a double episode drop of Widow's Bay, the Apple TV Plus horror comedy series, which seems to be picking up a lot of traction. And really a pleasure, a surprise, nothing that was on my radar earlier in the year. And it's really become one of my favorite watches of the week. So that will pretty much be almost the entirety of our conversation. Just a quick call to action. Make sure you subscribe. We will be not only wrapping up Euphoria and Your Friends and Neighbors and Half Man and the rest of Widow's Bay and having discussions around all of that. We also have additional bonus content, a Christopher Nolan film rewatch occurring on the Patreon, plus kicking off a bunch of new films and movies that are premiering in June. Primarily, the big one is Cape Fear, also on Apple TV+. So subscribe so you know when all that content becomes available. Email us anytime, needssomeintroduction@gmail.com. Join our Patreon for that bonus content and comment on any of our posts on Spotify, YouTube, or Patreon as well. Let's get into that conversation. All right, Celia, so it's been quite some time since we've been on the podcast.
It's been long.
Very long time, yes. I was going to joke that we can spend the rest of the conversation just catching up. Like, what have you been watching in the past 9-10 months?
So much.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not going to happen. But a couple of things I did want to run by you. First of all, I've mentioned this to you already, but multiple people on the Patreon were saying, like, someone brought up that someone who's been a loyal listener for the entirety of this podcast practically was mentioning, I really enjoyed all the different hosts he's had on and the conversations they've had. And he called you out, just as a list of, these, Darren, of course, and Sona, but of course, Celia as well, who hasn't been on a podcast for a while. And some of the other Patreons were like, yeah, where has she been? I thought she was going to come back on the podcast. She's never been on the podcast. So here she is. She's returned. The Patreons will be happy to know.
I'm back. That is so nice, by the way, that people missed me. I love that.
Yeah, we'll have to have you come on more regularly. It seems like our schedules never line up, or we're just not watching the same things, or, I'm on top of something and you're just starting to watch it. So maybe we just have to pick something and say, we're going to watch this show together and then just put it on the calendar and be done with it.
Yeah, that'd be best because life gets in the way if you don't plan it out. Even then, doesn't always work out. But yeah, the planning, I think, is a good strategy.
Trust me, I know from having to try to coordinate these episode conversations. And of course, just mentioning that to everybody out there as well, join the Patreon. You can join for free. There's a lot of free content out there already. We're rewatching the Christopher Nolan films. We've seen some of them already. We discussed The End of the Boys. And I'll be putting additional content there. Probably my reaction to some of these summer blockbusters that probably won't make it into the main feed. So make sure you join. And of course, you can all chat with each other. We're already starting to have some conversations there. And as that population gets larger, I'd love to see everybody meeting each other. And I already did this in the last podcast, but not everybody listens to all of these episodes. So I just want to mention that I'm so amazed by the Patreons, by the way, with not only those folks, but basically everybody who listens to the podcast. I think everybody's so awesome. Celia, I really do. Everybody that I've had email conversations with or via Spotify comments or YouTube or on the Patreon, or not even on the Patreon, just emails that I receive. When I started doing this podcast, I was hoping to meet people. Like, I didn't want to just do a true crime podcast or talk about things that I wasn't interested in. I didn't want to just talk about reality TV shows or something that might just get an audience. I was looking for people who were like me, trying to find good things to watch and really think about them, process them a little bit, slow things down. Everything's so easy now to just have a 2-second conversation or a meme on everything just becomes this meme culture. So I wanted to have something to slow down and appreciate things. And I honestly, until I started hearing back from the audience, didn't know if that's the type of audience I was finding. But that's exactly the type of audience I'm finding. These people are very educated, very smart in their fields of work, very well established, and really sharp folks. So you guys are all very cool. And thanks for listening.
They're like you.
Like me, exactly.
Like
just as
you.
fascinating and wonderful as I am. So
that is Correct.
So yeah, and check out the Patreon, everybody, if you want some additional content. It's all out there. Oh, check the show notes if you want the link. It's right there. Okay. So Celia, before we get into Widow's Bay, I wanted to get your kind of opinion of the show up until now. But is there anything you wanted to mention that you've been watching that maybe you can mention to the audience? Here on the podcast, of course, we're wrapping up, approaching the end of Your Friends and Neighbors, very much anticipating the beginning of Cape Fear, very heavily advertised. I see ads for this thing constantly on, even when I'm watching sporting events and such. So a big expenditure on this very glossy remake of Cape Fear. Of course, one of, I always find that story fascinating, has been remade multiple times, both times that I'm aware of that it's been remade, really fascinating works. Can't wait to see this new version of it.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Yes. Great cast. Great. I mean, I worry a little bit. I trust in the talent in general, but I am a little worried about this story being expanded to 8 to 9, 10 episodes, whatever the run is going to be. So I guess they're going to have to make things more complicated. So we will see. But I do trust in this very talented behind the scenes and in front of the cameras cast and crew. So very curious to see this. My first question to you, by the way, is I know you loved The Handmaid's Tale, something that I quit on like a quarter of the way through season 1, probably. But have you been watching The Testaments?
I have.
Is it good?
It's good. It's not great like The Handmaid's Tale was, in my opinion, but it is good because it takes over where her daughter is now this purple person as opposed to the other colors because she menstruated, which seems to be something not everyone can do anymore. So it's like highly celebrated and they have to pick a husband for her, or they have, the husbands get to pick the girls, of course, which is how it is in The Handmaid's Tale. But it's good. The actress is really good. She was the actress who was in that movie.
One Battle After Another.
Yes, yes. She's so beautiful, by the way.
Yes.
Is this girl like the most beautiful woman? Anyway, so she's in that. And the other characters are, I think, riveting in a lot of ways because of the subplot that's going on there, where the mother's kind of running things behind the scenes. And they have gotten this girl that is kind of like a lost soul. Her parents were killed into the handmaiden's world. So it's really interesting, I think. But is it as good as The Handmaid's Tale? Probably not, because what I loved about that is that it was just this ongoing nightmare. The vibe, this under vibe was just always dread, which I found really impressive that they could sustain this throughout an entire season. And we don't have that intense dread at every moment. I think maybe they wanted to, but it's not there. But I still like it.
I haven't heard if it's getting renewed for a season 2 or not, but curious to see how that goes. And next thing I was going to ask you about is, I know you just saw Obsession, but let's not talk about that. That would become a whole digression. But if we have time at the end of the conversation, maybe get your thoughts on that as well, because I know you were really enthusiastic about it. In general, we've been really enthusiastic here on the pod as well. But what I wanted to focus on is, of course, these two huge, this is going to be enough for us to talk about, I think, these two huge drops of 2 episodes of Widow's Bay. So before we break down these 2 episodes, how have you been liking the first 5 episodes of this show? And what's your experience of watching it? When did you start watching it? Have you been there from the beginning? Did you binge it recently? How are you feeling about the show?
I started from the beginning, and the first episode I thought was quirky and cute. And I'm like, is this, I guess, town haunted? I guess it's pretty evident, like by the end of the episode, that's probably 99% what's happening. So that was interesting. I don't really always give pilots my full critique because sometimes it's hard to have a really good pilot. You have to introduce everybody and then you have to figure out how to tell the audience what's the show is even about.
Yeah.
So I didn't love the first episode, but it did a very good job of setting up what we were to expect. And then it started getting better as like the episodes just went on. The last two episodes are horrifying and really exciting, which I'm like, wow, this is exciting and very funny. Like the acting is so funny.
Yeah. I mean, for me, Patricia, now that the show is like straight on a horror film or series, I should say, that there are still like Matthew Rhys specifically in the most recent episodes has some comic highlights, mostly because he's trying to come out as a hero versus this fraidy cat that he's been so far. But those two things are still in tension. And his reaction to things is very funny. But still, not only was she have the best episode of the season, in my opinion, the Patricia episode, but her in general, this performance is astounding. Like she is, even now in the most recent episode, like what an incredible performance she gives.
Because it makes sense. If I was her and somebody made me go to this island and I'm like an old maid or whatever they're considered, and I'm so excited, and then I get to this weird island where it becomes evident that I'm in danger now because I just didn't want to, I guess, be single or whatever thoughts went through her head to get her there. But her reactions to stuff are completely logical. Like she's funny and panicked, but the whole thing made sense. It didn't even feel like she was overacting, even though it's very dramatic. So I agree with you. Great performance.
Yeah, for me, I was just thinking about this today as I was taking my notes for this conversation, that it's so brilliant in her performance, but also Matthew Rhys's performance and everybody's performance in general, which just everybody giving amazing performances, is that this is a horror show like normally where it's like all of a sudden the scared kid picks up the weapon and now he is a hero and becomes the hero by the end of the movie. What's so great about this is that the stakes are really high and now it's getting emotional and scary. And you think about him potentially afraid of losing his son. The stakes could not be higher, but these are still these same people we've met in this kind of workplace comedy in this new context. So it's not like they just suddenly become heroes. They're still those same people in this now crazy situation, which is where all the comedy comes from. And it's really brilliant.
And the people make sense because you think about it, you're like, they never left this island. Like, why would you not leave this island? But then you meet them and they're just like quirky and kind of, I don't know. They're not people like New Yorkers who like are running around or whatever, and you want to travel and you want to go to Greece or somewhere. Like they're just on this island, and somehow it makes sense.
It does, but the thing that I think is missing in the show, and maybe it will still come, but for me, this is the one flaw in this almost flawless show. And there's been better episodes and worse episodes. I'm not saying they're all perfect, but the highs are really high. But more importantly is that I think that it, like you said, all the things you said, the comedy, the bouncing of the horror, the definition of these characters and the situation is in a very naturalistic way, not in a heightened way, not like American Horror Story where they, have quick cuts in some kind of, Roanoke, like some kind of a series set in like the 1700s, which looks completely ridiculous for me anyway, that it's like, kind of believable in this mundanity of what you're seeing. And then the horror kind of emerges from that and the comedy as well. Anyway, all of this is really excellently done. The one thing I feel is missing and could be interesting and may yet come is kind of what you're touching on there. We know now for a fact that it's not just a wives' tale that if you leave the island, bad things happen to you. We know it happened to his wife. We know it's happened to other people as well. So the older people who've been there, they probably were all disgruntled kids at some point saying they want to leave. And whether it's hysterical blindness or whether it is, you could say this is all happening in their heads. So it's all not real, but they hear the stories and they know what happened to their friends and their parents and etc. So there is this, they know that this is going to go badly. And now, of course, that adds context to like when Tom is trying to lure people to the island, everybody at the beginning of the show is like, all right, good luck with that, because they all have these histories or mythology in their own past. But the thing that's kind of missing here, we just barely hint at it, is could you imagine that these older people have this kind of wisdom of like, you guys think you can leave this island, but you really can't. Like we've tried, I tried when I was a kid. I tried when I was in my 20s. We hear Wick's story here in this very episode, right? And they've all had really bad experiences with it. We know what happened to Tom's wife, which we got to circle around to that. Obviously fascinating. I suspected this, by the way, way back in maybe my first recap, that she wasn't actually dead, but something terrible happened to her when she left the island, right? And all of this stuff. But these kids, as is, like when you think about Station 11, a show we loved, right? When those kids go and like are running into death because they didn't grow up in the world where they knew all this danger. They grew up in a world where their parents were isolating them in this compound. So that outside threat is just all your parents being overly protective or overly controlling. And that tension is not fully conveyed in the show. As a matter of fact, so far, except for maybe the very end of the most recent episode, the kids are kind of annoying in general.
His son's the worst.
I know.
He's the worst.
But that's why I'm trying to say that there is an opportunity, and maybe it'll come, where you can be more sympathetic to that kid. Because could you imagine being that kid? You can't even leave the island. You're going to live on this island for the rest of your life. Like, think about how annoying that would be if you were his age.
It would be. But he's got the type of personality where he kind of smiles while not doing what he should be doing.
Yeah.
And then trying to, in a weird way, charm you to his point of view. And he's so not charming. He's like annoying as hell.
Yes, I agree. He's the most annoying character. And that's where I'm saying that there's kind of a missed opportunity here, although we have empathy for him here in this episode, where this might be a pivot. Because until now, he's just been a really irritating character. But I agree. Like now we have this kind of, this shoe drops at the end of this most recent episode, which is really pretty amazing revelation. And the performance, by the way, you think this kid might just be giving this very one-note performance. But the way he's kind of like internalizing this fact that he knew his mom, who he assumed had been dead this whole time, is pretty traumatic.
It is. Oh, no, I think he's a good actor. I think he's being a really good actor at being annoying. So... Like, I'm a fan of him. I have kids. They do stuff that is very similar. So that might be where I'm getting more annoyed. I'm like, oh, yes, I've been there and you're so annoying.
Yes. Darren and I have had the same conversation on the show where we're so irritated with the kid, but we're like, but we know as parents of kids who are in approaching teens or are teens, or in your case, beyond teens, it's like, yes, we're seeing it from that perspective for sure. But I assume that there are probably like teenagers or younger audiences watching this, and they're probably like really would be more empathetic to the kids who cannot leave the island at all.
Thanks for throwing my age out there, or beyond teens, you say.
Well, you were a teen mom, so don't worry about it. Your oldest child is 45 years old. Just kidding.
Wow.
That's not true.
It could be more, You
never
don't know if I live on a haunted island or whatever.
That's possible. You could be,
I could be like 150 years old and look really good for my age.
Yeah, we may have seen multiple people. We definitely saw one person, but we may have multiple people on this show that are perpetually of a certain age. So I'm very curious to get your read on a couple of these things. Okay, so I had a similar experience, by the way. Episode 1, I liked the pilot. I had heard these rave reviews for the show. I love Hiro Murai, by the way, the director of those first 3 episodes, who did Station 11, who did Atlanta, who did The Bear, who did Barry, right? So I'm like, if he makes something, I'm watching it, right? So given all that, very excited to watch this show. And then I was like, okay, the pilot was okay. It wasn't knocked out. And then, like you said, even though he only directed the first 3 episodes, the show not only got better over those 3 episodes, it got better beyond that. Episode 4, I think, was the highlight of the season for me so far, not directed by Hiro Murai, directed by one of the main directors of Severance, actually, and who also directed, by the way, same director, directed this most recent episode on the boat. So Seasickness. So that is, again, another highlight episode for sure. Then episode 5 comes, and I don't know if you had the same opinion, but for me, episode 5 was a dip. Still a very good episode, by the way. And every episode's been kind of different than the previous one, almost like in a different genre practically, or maybe not genre, but in a different style for sure. And that kind of like those kind of broken up moments where we're like in his state of mind and then out of it again. it didn't fully work for me, but the end of that episode was truly disturbing for me. Was episode 5 like a little bit of a dip for you, or were you still 100% on board?
Oh, I'm like, I thought you were going to tell us more about it. So episode 5 was the one where like there was a curfew.
Yeah, he's taking the mushrooms and he's kind of dipping in and out of the show.
I thought he was going to be way more dramatic about the mushrooms. I thought that the mushrooms would bring on a much bigger revelation. So, I mean, it was fine, but the whole time I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see like, something over the top spectacular, mushroom related happen. And I didn't get that personally. So it was okay. I started getting really more into it on episode 6.
Really? Okay, and the flashback episode?
Yes. So, I mean, I really liked the show. I'm not being critical.
Yeah.
But like I said, the first episode, I was like, oh, okay, good setup. And then there was the other one. I think it was called Lodging.
Yeah, that was episode 2. Yeah.
That was really funny, by the way.
I like that one too.
But it it didn't come off like horror. It was just funny. And so was the inaugural swim.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How hilarious was the inaugural swim?
Yes. I love the sea hag coming to, drown him.
So funny and like really creepy.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Oh my God. Like you don't want that happening. And then, I don't know.
Patricia's episode
5, I thought would have been better, but it wasn't bad. It was just watchable, leading to something. So that's good.
You skipped Patricia's episode though, which I think for me was my favorite of the season.
Oh, the beach reads? Party. Oh my God, poor her. This is what I mean by it makes sense that these people like live on this island and don't really care. Like the whole party is strange. And then you find out why everybody's being so mean to her. Yes. And I'm like, is she even stranger than I think? Although I find these people's reaction to her a little kind of like really bullyish, to be honest, because if I'm stuck on an island with 30 people, even though Patricia's really, really strange, I would not spend all my time trying to exclude her from things and being a giant bully. I would just think she's really strange, but I can't leave this island. And now I have to get along with this person. I can't be a bully because that's gross.
On the one hand, I actually have a lot of empathy for that confrontation, that girl who confronts her, because either way, obviously we're in Patricia's POV. If she really was stalked by this killer, that would be horrifying that no one believed her whole entire life and she's trapped with these people, right? On the other side, if she was so lonely, like they theorize, and it may be true, by the way, that she pretended that she had been stalked by this killer just for the story, just to be able to have something to say or to grab a headline, even, not a real headline, but like, with among the friend group momentarily, then that's really pathetic and sad that someone would do that, right? Like what kind of psychological place would you be in to make this story up, which is horrible, right? But then imagine being this girl who, like, my best friend was murdered and you are pretty certain this person is lying about it and has been lying about it for years. That would be an insult. I mean, to me, if I'm in her situation, I would never forgive this person for what they did.
I understand that if you were in Manhattan and this happened. But what I mean by what I said before is that even if it is just outrageous that this person was so lonely, they had to go make this up, in my brain, and this is how I get through life, by the way, and get along with many people that no one else gets along with. I assume you're crazy. Like, I just assume you're nuts. And then I try to accommodate that and be like, all right, well, the reason they behaved like that is because of this. And the reason he behaved like this or said that thing is because, really, this is all about fear. Most things are just about fear, like fear of whatever. So this lady would be the same. Like, why did she do this outrageous thing? Like, why would anyone lie about this? But then you're like, what you said, she's so lonely, blah, blah, blah. Or she is crazy. And the thing is that I have to be on this island with this person and I can't leave this island. And now I'm stuck with this person who I'm just going to say she's got some serious issues. I don't know how mad I could stay for like years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah, maybe the empathy would come around eventually.
I would be mad at first, and then because these people can't leave, the whole point is they're all like going to grow old together in this location. You know, when you see those old movies about those people in like, 1940s Italian towns or whatever, and there's like, the crazy guy, and everybody's got this personality tag because it's this really small town. This is like what this show is like. So I don't know if I could stay mad at someone in this tiny town unless they did something that is truly unforgivable, despite them being crazy, like murdering, a child or something like more than, oh, I told a lie, a really bad, humiliating, like tragic lie. So it would have to be more than that when you cannot leave the island. You could totally be indignant forever if you are not stuck with someone like family,
Right.
So
yeah, because we all know that family historically always forgives each other and moves on and never talks about the same things that they've been arguing about for 40 years.
No, they do, but they're still like, invited to Christmas or at least allowed to eat the turkey while
they did allow her into the party. They did, they even said
they invited so mean to her. Of course. You say, of course, and I'm thinking, why are you still being mean to this girl? Clearly she's got problems. And just, I guess get over it, stop beefing about this. She's probably a liar and she's really weird, but
she might save them all as well. So
she might, but before I even assume that, I'm like, but she's here all the time. Like a coworker that really gets on your nerves. At some point you have to be like, they're just so annoying, but it's happy hour. So
this is interesting. The show itself is like such a win for her character, even if she doesn't survive the show. And I can't imagine them killing her off, but I'm just saying, regardless, at this moment, it's such a win for her because, she is incredibly lonely. So now she has this cohort of this handful of people that have to hang out with her because she's the only one that's in the loop with all the craziness that's going on. Although I think the Scooby Gang is going to continuously get a little bit bigger. But we only have 3 more episodes to go, so it's not going to get that much bigger. But at the same time, it's like, she is showing herself to be, she could just go lock herself in her house. She's actually out there risking her life, literally, in some cases, to save the people on this island. So she's quite a redemption for her, for sure. She's like, in a way, she might be the hero of this whole show.
I hope so. Like, I'm rooting for her.
Okay, let's talk about episode 6, which is called Our History, which is directed by Ty West. This is the same guy who directed Us and Pearl and Maxine, that trilogy of films. Pearl, of course, I think is the one that probably got him this particular job because he's like kind of set in the past, although this is much further in the past than Pearl was. But I think it's maybe part of where he got that. However, this guy's actually done a lot of TV directing work. So he's been not only these movies that he's done recently, that's been breakthroughs for him, but he directed some of the best episodes or one of the best episodes of Poker Face. He directed one of the best episodes of Tales from the Loop. He directed, what was that movie, that series we watched, which was really disturbing, Them. He directed a couple of the best episodes of Them. And he directed The Exorcist, that TV series version of The Exorcist, not the movie version. But anyway, he's done a lot of TV directing, very skilled, and does a good job. I got to say, I know you really like this episode. For me, episode 6 is the worst episode of the season. The new worst compared to last week. Episode 5 was my worst episode of the season. This is now the new winner for the worst episode of the season, mostly not because it's bad in any way, mostly because it felt completely unnecessary, in my opinion. But but still beautifully executed, and it literalizes a lot of things that we've been inferring anyway. And for me, unnecessarily, my personal opinion. However, all that being said, it's beautifully made and very funny. The performances are great. What do you think of this episode in general?
I think that it was necessary because there's this haunted man on the island and we don't know anything about him. So now we do.
Yeah, but think about the next episode when, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but for me, the only reason I say it's unnecessary, I think about the next episode and when he starts talking and he's like saying that I was in the woods and I was desperate for food and I was hungry and it was hungry and we met each other. Like, hearing that without the flashback context, which was kind of comedic, is more disturbing, me doing that work in my own head, than having it presented. It's basically my opinion.
Oh, yeah, definitely more disturbing. But the episode was very, very funny. So I think maybe they were aiming for that. Like, let's introduce characters from the past or actually still here and explain further about the island, but make it really funny. And that's what I thought they were doing. So I thought it was really good.
Okay, a couple things to bring up. Actually, let's walk through the plot a little bit. I think we'll probably spend more time on the last episode, but we'll see how it goes. First of all, Betty Gilpin, starring in this bottle episode, practically this flashback episode, which I assume is not going to come back. I think this is the only time we're going to travel back in time in the show, my guess anyway. There's only 3 more episodes again, so a lot of ground to cover in just 3 more episodes. But she was great. And what's your relationship with her? People talk about what a great actress she is. I had only seen her in Mrs. Davis, that AI comedy from a few years ago, and she was really good at that. I didn't really like that series, by the way, but she was great in it. But she already had this reputation. People were always really gaga about her. Do you know her from anything else, or was this the first time?
I saw her on that show, that like doctor show. I think it was Grey's Anatomy.
I wouldn't know. I don't know. I can look her up on.
Yeah, let's look her up.
I don't see her in Grey's Anatomy. She was in that movie, The Hunt, which I think you guys watched.
She was in some show. I got to find her now. I'm obsessed.
Oh, I saw her last year in Death by Lightning, which I love that series, by the way. It was in my honorable mentions, I think, for the year. Just a small part there, but just wanted to use that as an excuse to talk about that again. She was in a horror movie called The Hunt from 2020.
I saw that. That was good.
I've really rarely seen her in anything. I saw her in Mrs. Davis, like I mentioned. She was in 34 episodes of Nurse Jackie, another show that I did not watch. That's over 10 years ago, though. Yeah, so I don't really know her from too much, based on her resume here.
Nurse Jackie, maybe that's where I remember her from. All my doctor shows get mixed up. ER is still my favorite, but so weird.
But so I guess you don't really know. I was just curious if you had a relationship with her from anything else. Long and short of it, I thought she was really excellent and very funny, like just an incredible. And by the way, a lot of the energy she brought to that Mrs. Davis show, which again, I preferred her performance way more than I liked the show itself. Some very funny details here. I love that she thought she was going to be a spinster forever because she was this old, decrepit age of 10 and 4. 2 very funny things: that she's an old, decrepit
10 and 4.
She's 14 years old, can't find herself a husband. First of all, hilarious that is the case. Second, of course, that this woman is nowhere near 14 years old.
44.
No. She's 10 and 4. She's 14 years old, and she's an old, destitute, unmarriageable woman.
Why would they get this 44-year-old woman to act like she was 14?
That's what's so funny. That's what's funny about it.
10 and 4 in like the olden years. I think she's 44.
10 and 4 is 40 is 14 in olden times.
She's 14.
14, yes. I'm telling you, that's the joke of the whole thing. 44 years old in 1700, you're dead at 44. You're not going to be married at 44.
Oh my, I did not know she was 14 for many obvious reasons.
Very funny. At 10 and 4, ancient 10 and 4. You should be married by 12. You're going to get married at 14. Also very funny that this is supposed to be a 14-year-old person.
Yeah, just makes no sense. She cannot be that. See, all comedy, it's got to be, because when she said that, I was like, oh, so she's 44, 10 times 4 and 4, I thought. Wow, good catch with the 14-year-old.
It's very funny.
I like when she meets that guy in the beginning, and he's like, you can come to me anytime. Yeah. And I'm thinking he's hitting on her, but he really means it. Like, you can come to me anytime. You know,
yeah, he's actually like winking at. Yeah, exactly. In the moment, you think he's like being lecherous, but right, he's like, you're going to meet your husband, and you're going to figure out what's going on in a minute, and trust me, you're going to want to come. And any day of the day and the day and nights, please come talk to us, because we're actually conspiring to murder him behind his back.
But the way it plays out, it's almost like, you can come over whenever you want.
It definitely it feels lecherous when you're hearing it, but then you realize what the real intention is soon thereafter.
Yes.
I like the fact that, when she's writing this diary to herself, she goes, I hope my husband is handsome. Little. She feels like shouldn't even ask God for a handsome husband. Hard to know if this guy would be handsome or not, considering how gruff he is as soon as meets her. And of course, we find out
strange.
Yes. And I'm not a big, this actor, Hamish Linklater, I'm not a huge fan of him in general, but I do think that the performance when he's like back from the dead is very funny, very good. But in this flashback episode, it's a little odd. By the way, I think you've seen this show, A Midnight Mass, where they're also on an island and there's like a vampire.
Oh, I think so.
He's the star of that. That's from, what's his name?
I did see it. Okay, I just got a flashback. That was a pretty good show. Very slow burning, but really good.
That is very good, yeah. I also think that since you have him in that series as well, it's almost like there's a little wink there. Think about it. It's a haunted island. There's a lot of commonality here between here and...
Maybe he never left the first show and he's still on the set. They're like, you know what? Just stay here.
Oh, you're still here. So why don't you shoot this set as well?
Yeah, why not? You can wear the same clothes.
And very soon we realize, it's interesting, by the way, that, the way he allows himself to like beat this guy to death at one night when the guy's questioning him, when she's in the very next room. It's like he doesn't even mind. I guess he just assumes, well, she's my wife now, so she has to comply with anything I tell her to. But this whole detective story that she goes into, trying to figure out what's actually going on. And there's some real comic highlights here, definitely in her performance. One is, of course, after he's killed this person and she shows up in the middle of the night and asks the reverend and these other townsfolk that are trying to rise up against this guy that she's going to betray him, basically let them in the middle of the night. And then she's in the bed and the assassin comes in. This is so funny. And like puts the knife up in the air, like right out of Lord of the Rings, by the way. And he's like going to stab her. And then she like points aggressively, like at the other bed. Very funny. But of course he survives because he's like, he can't die. He's impervious to death.
I like when everybody's like, you got to do this for your children. You got to help us. And she's like,
children who have known for days that just met them.
Yeah. And they're all like probably her age, 10 and 4. At least the oldest one is.
Just a few years younger than she is, right? Although, of course, this woman who's 30 years older than these child actors.
I think that the writers made a mistake. They don't really want her to be 10 and 4. I have to stop thinking about this. Now I'm like, what? I like that she's trying to still love this man. Like she's trying to wait upon him, but he's just so creepy. Like
I think initially maybe, but pretty soon she's not on board with this.
No, I guess it was because she's only there for a few days. So she goes there all like eager. And then there's like really creepy scenes, like when the guy's in the chair with his eyes rolled back in his head.
Yeah. That's like day 2. That's like day 2 that she's there. Exactly. He's got this vial around his neck, which we find out later on has like a writing inside of it, which he found when he was in the woods. Anyway, we can leave that on for the next episode to figure out what some of these things are. Because I do want to start tying together what's being revealed in the mystery. Because I think, especially with this flashback episode, we're seeing overtly all the things we've seen in the island. Like, for example, towards the end, we have this woman who's, has her eyes are gouged out and she's by the water line. She attacks her. She falls into the water. Is that the sea hag? We have the mythology of this guy who can't die, who had to be buried alive, which is the boogeyman. Of course, this Richard himself, the founder of the island, is basically can't die as well. So here's another parallel to things we've seen on the island before. So I think the mythology is kind of like coming together. And of course, all the way back in episode 1, we saw the camera go like down the well into this, like we saw this chair with this like metal door, which and straps in the chair. So like someone's placed there, I guess, to be like fed to this demon. And we see here like a rudimentary version of it when she goes down into the basement. She finds this wooden door and the chair is there. And then you see like a streak of blood and like hair dragged into the door or beyond the door. So apparently there's, it's kind of coming full circle and explaining, or at least introducing the origin of some of these things here on the island.
So do you think that the plague was something that the island had happen because it was going to trap these people here and make it easier for them to believe?
Well, I mean, my reading of this, and maybe we can delve into it even more when we get to episode 2, is that the island, it's almost like Lost. And that's maybe another reference point here. There's so many Easter eggs to other things, but it's almost like you have this person who comes to the island. He was dying of hunger. The only reason they ate those mushrooms is because they had no food. They had a really brutal winter and there was nothing to eat and everybody was dying. And just like Tom at the end of episode 5, who's like puking in the toilet and then says, please, somebody help me. I'll do anything. Help me. And then that voice comes out. So disturbing, by the way. Chills down my spine. I had my AirPods in, by the way, and the Apple TV shows have an option where you can listen to it through the AirPods, and they use sound, like atmospheric sound, like 3D sound. So when the sound drops out and you hear the voice, I was like laying in bed watching this with the headphones in, and I was like ice going down my spine. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Oh, that's
so I recommend it, everybody. Use your AirPods when you listen to this show in 3D sound. That's really cool. But anyway, so just like Tom, there's a lot of paralleling here, right? Tom is now currently the mayor of the island. This guy was like the head of the island. He even says, at one point in episode, we're jumping ahead now, but in the next episode that Richard would only talk to the current protectorate of the island. They just assume that that's him. He lives, I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think he's living in Richard's house. Richard's house might connect to that tunnel that goes to the feeding for the demon. So there's a lot of paralleling. Like he has now kind of stepped into the role that Richard had. And now the bell rings. And when the bell rings, we saw in the flashback that he's like, I have to go. It was on his wedding day. And he's to be like, no time for wedding night stuff to happen. I got to go. I have things to do. And for all we know, that's him like going to commune with the demon or feed the demon somebody. Like maybe that's why all these people disappearing. And because we do see like the hair being dragged down. Specifically in that case, it's the guy he beat to death. But who knows? He might have to do this every week or every month to keep this demon in check. But anyway, the point is that I think what happened was that he was desperate, begging for help. And this demon is there, has probably been there forever. And he said, oh, I will give you a thriving community. But there's all these caveats, right? You can't leave the island. You have to feed me these people, right? I don't know if they're outsiders or who has to get fed to them. I don't think we know the rules of how this takes place. But I do think the ringing of the bell is some kind of signal. And of course, that's what was so disturbing. If we go back and walk through the plot of the show, that the bell had been like encased so it could not ring anymore because probably people knew what it meant when the bell rang. But now something has happened and the bell is ringing again.
It's true. Or he could have seen her, didn't have time to do anything on the wedding night because he's all like, thou art not 10 and 4.
Yeah, you're not really 14. I don't buy that for a second.
I'm busy.
I don't know. That bell rang. He answers to the bell.
He does, but you know how men are, so.
Now he's got a lot of things on his mind, but she is able to seduce him right before he tries to choke her out.
I like this episode. I like that there is an explanation of what's happening, like I said before. So
I would say, okay, so two things. One is I like the episode. I think it's well done. I prefer my version of the show that I prefer. We can infer all these things because even what I'm describing, like how this works, is my inference from some of the conversations that happen in the next episode, right? So it's not even like I needed to see like, oh, look, there was a cave downstairs. It's been there the whole time. I kind of knew that, right? Like that this guy was feeding people to it or whatever. He's telling them like, I made a deal with this devil when I was dying and I ate those mushrooms and, everybody in the community was dying as well. And the plague, by the way, that's why this would trigger this whole rabbit hole conversation in the first place, is that the plague is on the island right now. So perhaps he has not been feeding the demon or whatever it is. And that's why there is this like plague on the island. So, but it's interesting, by the way, that the only historical document of a plague on the island is then. That's how they knew to pinpoint this particular diary. So what's her name? Jerry from the museum knew. So it's the only reference to a plague is all the way back in 1702, which we see like the time placard on the screen itself. So it's interesting because it means that you look at the way the doors on the demon door is like now made out of metal or whatever. So somebody has been on that island this whole time doing what they need to do to keep the demon taken care of. And maybe that's why there's all these stories of like the boogeyman and all this other stuff. All those supernatural stories are just artifacts of this, process of killing people and feeding it to the demon. Oh, an interesting note from the flashback episode. What do you make of this? Did you notice that the guy who intercepts her on the island when she arrives, the young man who helps her onto the carriage, is played by the same actor who plays PJ, plays the son's best friend in current day?
I did not know that, but is it because, it's a relation to PJ?
Well, that's what's interesting about it. And I made this notice. And of course, there's a whole Reddit conversation going on already about this. And what's interesting is that we have definitely seen in the past other flashback episodes where they have actors playing like my grandfather on the island on Lost or something like that. They get the same actor to play the other role. And they do that a lot because not a lot, but they'll do it a few times because you're saying like, well, yeah, that just shows that this person or someone in his lineage was on the island back in the day or in the flashback, right? What's interesting is that they didn't do that where they took all the people we've met on the island and put them into different roles in the past, which could be funny actually if they had done that because, we do know that this family's been there, but that they have the exact same actor playing this role. And we do know that people can live forever on this island. So is he someone who's been there even longer, who has not aged? Or is he some kind of manifestation? Like people on the Reddit are saying that maybe he's like a trickster, like it's the island, manifesting this kind of tricky person. Because first of all, the reason this is coming from the Reddit boards, by the way, but interesting points. When Tom is hallucinating and they bring up that his son is going to be hanging out with PJ, he has this reaction where he's like, PJ is a terrible, terrible person. Like he has this really strong reaction. And in the moment, you're just like, this dad really doesn't like PJ, but maybe he knows exactly what PJ is at this point when he's in that, hallucinatory state. And the other thing that people mention as well is that, of course, he was trying to get the son to go into the house where the boogeyman supposedly lives. So maybe he's part of the demon force.
That is interesting. I didn't even notice, to be honest. So interesting insight. I'm going to assume he's just extremely old.
He's just been there for a really long time. Maybe he's just like, I made some deal with the demon. I've been trapped at this age for my whole entire life. Maybe he's trying to like nudge things along to be like, get me out of this situation. But I guess, now we know. I guess he could just go out on a boat far enough and he'd probably just turn into bones if that's the case.
That whole bone thing is very interesting to me. Like what happens if the boat comes back?
Well, the boat is coming back, so I guess we'll see if he turns back into a person again. But I think he's dead. I think he's dead for good. That's my guess.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I thought about that.
So, of course, then we know this just through historical context that she escapes the island. She goes out on the ship. The mayor of the island, the founder of the island, is buried, but they dig him up in the very next episode. We'll get around to that in just a minute. But very importantly, he says in the next episode, again, we're kind of jumping around here, but there's so much of this that's the mythology is all intertangled, that he needed to die to break the curse on the island because it's tied to his bloodline. And then the question was, of course, at the end of the episode, we see that she gets the kids on the boat and she's rowing out. She escapes after the preacher's wife shows up and tries to negotiate with her, and she hits her in the head with an oar, but escapes. Because, of course, at the end, again, sorry about the jumping around, but at the very end of the next episode, the most recent one, we have the camera zoom in on that painting that we've seen in the hotel before, where we have someone rowing a boat full of children, but there's one child in the water. So my theory, I'm kind of jumping to it right away, is that one of the children who was in the boat fell overboard. They lost her at sea. The rest of his family escaped. I don't know if they died. Like, did they go past that barrier and all die? It's possible. Who knows, right? But long story short is I think that somebody from his bloodline fell off that boat and ended up washing back on shore. So somebody in this show is actually of his direct lineage. And they're going to have to find out who that is, because they're the remaining bloodline that needs to actually die to end this curse. Because the curse is not over, is the point I'm making.
Do you think it's that boy that we were talking about?
I don't think so, because it looks like there's a young girl who falls into the water. My theory is that this young girl did not live forever. I think this young girl just had a family, and it's somebody on the island. I'm pretty certain it's someone we've already met. It could be it could be Wick. It could be Patricia. That would be kind of ironic if she has to sacrifice herself at the end. That would be amazing. A twist at the end of the show. Yeah, I think it's somebody that we have met for sure, because I think there has to be some stakes in this person, either knowing they're a villain and they're manipulating everybody and we don't see them as a villain yet. Definitely not the central group. I don't think any of those people are keeping any secrets that are that serious.
I have a theory about
theory?
Patricia. So Patricia probably was present during those murders where everyone's saying, why didn't you die?
She's protected.
She's protected. They won't kill her.
That's a good theory. I like it. So it could be Patricia in the end. Yes. And maybe she didn't lie, like you said, but when the boogeyman showed up and saw who she was, he's like, oh, I can't touch her.
Yes, that's what I mean. So Patricia could be related to, this boogeyman.
That would be a truly tragic ending to the show. By the way, to reinforce our theory we just came up with here, because of the whole rowing of the boat and how the plan originally was to have the Tom row the coffin out on the boat. And of course, that got messed up in the most recent episode. The artwork for this show is Tom in a boat with Patricia rowing away from the island. So is that going to be the finale of the show, where she has to sacrifice herself? By the way, I already love this character so much, my favorite character on the show for sure. But if Patricia has to, in the end, sacrifice herself to save the island, these people who've treated her like garbage her whole entire life, wow, it would be like poetic and utterly tragic at the same time.
It's got to be it, because we have to redeem Patricia. Plus, why even have a whole backstory about how she lied about, being present during some murders? Like, what is that doing there? So this must be it. Look at that brainstorming.
We did it. We
did it. We figured it out.
We solved the show.
So we should tell spoiler, we solved the show. So
I've solved this. I've solved multiple shows. I solved multiple shows here on the podcast before. We may have collectively done it again.
Wow. Okay. Good for us. I'm already celebrating.
Don't pop the cork yet. We'll see what happens in next week's episode. But I do think that's a pretty watertight argument, I think, so far, for sure.
I'm going to just be like, prove me wrong. Let me see, because I'm convinced now that is the whole plot.
I like it. We might have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else you want to call out in the flashback episode before we jump to Seasickness, the next one?
No, I think people should watch it and just be amused because that's kind of just the whole point.
Again, this is the other thing I'll compliment that episode, which again, don't love it, but I'll compliment the episode for bringing, again, some of the most horrific images. You see somebody like gouging his wife's eyeballs out. And, it's literally some of the most horrible stuff we've seen on the show. And also like great comedy, mostly because Betty Gilpin is so funny. Like not only in like he's over there, not only in her reactions, her exasperated reactions. I love when he doesn't die, by the way. And she shows up at the Reverend's house and they're having a meeting. And she's like, he's alive, he's alive. Then she immediately has to like bow and calm herself down. It's like very funny.
It's funny because she looks like a hysterical woman.
Right.
When really she has very valid reasons to be acting like this. But when you're looking at her, you're just like, oh, it's that hysterical 14-year-old that you ragged
She's just
here
a
right
wee
before
less
a
of 10 and
plague.
4.
She arrived for the plague, poor thing.
Oh my gosh, she arrives just in time for the plague. It is plague season right now. Apologies.
So she's very stressed and, she probably got de-virginated by her husband last night. They don't know why she's...
I think he strangled her before he had a chance to.
But they imagine she did because that's what's supposed to happen. They didn't realize he would be turned off by her, obvious age problem. And then the bell and all that. So they just think she is... What did they used to call people during the Handmaid stage? Like where they were just like, they were like crazy. There's a word they used.
Hysteria?
Not hysteria. Yes. She has hysteria. Like when people would I guess I'm probably saying the most unfactual facts right now. Like when they would get their period and they would be like, oh, there's hysteria because of however they were acting or whatever. So they think she has hysteria, but really what's happening is that this guy is just beyond creepy.
Actually, the funniest part about it is she walks in there, he's alive. And it's not like she's just hysterical and no one believes her. They're all like, we know. They're like, we know he's a supernatural being. We know already. And she's the one who's just getting clued in on all this.
Did they know though? Up until that, but they didn't know that specifically.
Well, they tried to kill him, of course. So, I shouldn't say they say we know. They seemed very nonplussed by the discovery. It's almost like they're like, we kind of anticipated that might be what happens.
That's why the priest was like, you can come to me
anytime,
day or night.
Anytime you want to unlock the door, not for me to take advantage of you, but to kill your husband.
Or both. Maybe he wants, he's like, oh, maybe.
Because he was too old for any of that. He's got to be like 38 or 39 at least. So he's too young.
38. That's true.
That's what people looked like back then when they were 38.
It's true, though.
True. Everybody died.
That's
especially think about it.
Say.
On Plague Island, everyone's dead by 40. I'm sorry. That's just how it is.
They say these things. So, yeah, I want to talk like people in those times. I think that will be fun for the rest of the podcast. Ready?
I'm not ready for that.
Okay,
so Seasickness, this episode was much more effective for me anyway. And of course, picks up immediately from where we left off in episode 5. Tom wakes up. It's been 24 hours. He's been in front of that toilet for 24 hours, but he missed a day. And a lot of stuff's happened. The biggest thing that happened while he was sleeping is that they dug up the body of the Richard, the guy who founded the island. Oh, yeah. Well, I will get to some of this great comedy here in this episode as well. But the Richard Warren. And I love how they set this up because, of course, you could be like, this is crazy. Like you dug somebody up and they were still alive. Like, are you out of your mind? And we get to step into that after the fact. And great. This is just some of the best work the show has ever done. He walks into that room and Patricia is just tried to communicate with him. He only wants to communicate with you. And he only communicates by notes. And then as soon as she walks into the room, she's like, okay, see you later. Walks out the door. And the first jump scare when the guy speaks, And then the other jump scare, of course, I love when Patricia comes back in. She's like, sorry, I forgot my purse. Oh, God, it's so funny.
The whole thing is hilarious. And the guy saying stuff like he's like, I was tricked by the devil. And like, he was betrayed.
I really like the performance here too. I didn't love him in the flashback episode, but I love what he does here when he starts talking and he's like in shadow and covered in dirt and barely moving. And he has that really gravelly voice, which of course he was kind of setting up the last episode not that well, I think. But here really pays off how great that really gravelly voice sounds. And it starts off really menacing, but then when he tries to like interact with them later, like telling them to fuck off and stuff, it becomes very funny because it's like, like a vampire, like trying to talk in modern colloquialisms. It's very funny. But like the payoff of first how creepy it is and then how funny it becomes later is great.
I love that this guy just got out of this coffin. He seems like, considering how long he's been in this coffin, pretty sane.
Yeah. Think about it. He's been underground for 300 and some odd years.
Yeah, it is like a vampire, but he seems like pretty good. Like he can communicate. He's asking for help.
He loves Vienna sausages. Gives him enough energy to fight back later on.
Yes. And his skin is not so terrible for someone that's been underwater. Like he's not that bloated. So, I mean, not that he's a sexy character, because that's disgusting if you really think about it. But in a way, like
you are kind of attracted to him. You can admit it. It's a safe place for you. It's a safe space for you.
That's crazy. Like, oh, there's something about you still. You're in pretty good condition considering what's been happening and the power. Like he's immortal, I guess, unless he leaves the island. The power
but you'd have to live with him
has
on that island, Celia. You'd be very limited. You couldn't do that. You could never go into Boston. Well, I guess you could go into Boston.
Would never.
And just go back afterwards and hang out with your boy.
You've gone too far. I'm just saying, if I was like
also
80 years old or something, 480 years old, I'd be like, oh, you're not so bad. And he's kind of charming in a way. And he's so good about like telling everybody how he was going to end his own life, to save others. So he's also kind of noble.
Well, until he chickens out, but yes, until then, yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting scene.
Yeah, all of this is very funny. And touching, by the way. So first he starts off menacing. Oh, by the way, speaking of Patricia just being like, again, just not only the purse scene, but the whole seeing her notebook conversation with the guy is great. When she's just like, the first thing is just hello. And then of course he doesn't respond. So then she's like, was it something I said? She's taking affront that the 300 and something year old person is not responding. Is it me? Am I the problem?
Well, she has abandonment issues in so many ways. This, would not go well. Somebody kind of dismissing her when she's so involved. I'm always sticking up for her.
And then I was going to say, it actually gets a little touching and then gets creepy again when he first says, can I go see my children's things? Which was really touching, to go into the museum and see the children's things and then see the paper mache doll of the Betty Gilpin character's second wife, which at first he seems like he's having a tender moment with and then gouges out its eyeballs. So of course, like, nice, there you go. But I also like the detail that the t-shirt says, don't say I didn't warn ya. So
I want that t-shirt. That would be so cute.
I love the t-shirt. Yeah. I just like the fact that, like, here's this guy who's just like seeing the world, the modern world after 300 years and seeing like his kids' stuff and then seeing these t-shirts. It's a good thing he doesn't get to see more of the modern world. He probably went out before things got too troubling for him.
Poor guy. I feel bad for him.
It's been tough. It was tough. But, he did sell his soul to the devil. So, that's how things go.
But he was hungry.
So was the demon.
Yeah.
If he just had Vienna sausages, none of this would have happened.
No, but I can see where it happened, So he's not even really a bad guy.
Well, I mean, he actually, in a way, I mean, that's to that point. He's like, oh, it's easy for you, he says this to Tom, to judge me when this is a more serious. And this is the amazing thing about the show, being able to go from the silly to the profound in moments. But during all those interactions where he says, yeah, look at you now, 300 years later on this thriving island, which I allowed to happen with this deal that I made with the devil. See, that's what you get. And Tom turns around with him going like, my kid is trapped living on this hell rock. So it's like, yeah, it's, one way to look at it. Hey, the people still live here on this island. Other way to look at it, we can't ever leave. That's the trade-off.
That's true. Because if you arrive there of your own free will or you're just visiting, then it's your free will. But yeah, that's a problem if you are stuck there. But who thinks about this 300 years ago?
Honestly, if everybody, I mean, now I'm just playing this out of my mind. If everyone kind of knows those are the rules and you turn this thing to like a type of Martha's Vineyard and you make it attractive for outsiders to come, as long as there's no demon that has to be fed the blood of foreigners, except for that, if we can kind of take care of that particular problem, then you can figure out a way where this works, right? You go, you meet somebody there. You're from off the island, so you can travel if you need to. If you get pregnant, you leave the island to have the kid so that they're not trapped on the island, right? And then they come back and we'll see if you can make it work, right? You just take a lot of pictures.
Like
just take a lot of pictures, honey, when you go to Paris and show them to me when you get back.
That could be next season. It'll be like that Lotus show, except
the
like
White
on
Lotus
this island
with demons.
With demons. That would be good. We should pitch that.
There you go. Hey, you know what? If this show is as popular as it seems like it's becoming, they probably want to have more. Hey, have comedic horror shows with beautiful backdrops. We can throw one of those together.
Yeah. And like, famous actors will like do a cameo. You're like, oh, is that Nicole Kidman? She's in everything. She would show up.
She is in everything. That's true.
She's in everything.
Yeah, she was in Margot's had money troubles. She's a producer on that show, actually.
I think
she was originally
girl.
supposed to do the Michelle Pfeiffer role, and then she didn't. She went with the smaller role.
Oh, and whenever I go to AMC, she's like, hello, we're at the AMC. I feel like she's everywhere. Turn on the TV, she's there. She could totally show up for a cameo on
Thank God
our
they've shortened that, by the way. Thank God they've shortened that AMC ad part.
That was really long. I'm like, I don't like her suit. It's like shiny. It's silver.
Really, not a fan.
I can't stand the suit. So anyway, I agree with you.
So now they're in the museum. They've been hearing screaming. And so Bashir, the sheriff, shows up. We don't know what the origin of all the screaming was, I don't think, at this point. And Patricia walks outside to be like, oh, it was me being hysterical again. And that doesn't scare him off enough. So she goes and like tries to steal the sheriff's truck while they make their getaway on the boat with Richard. I like how he coaxes him back into the coffin. He's like, I'm just going to be there for a little while. It's like, there's going to be people there. So we just want to, we have to hide you away just till we get on the boat. He's like, just till we get on the boat? Yes, just till we get on the boat. But of course, they do not want to get him out of that boat. Out of the coffin. And Wick is right to not trust that situation. But of course, Tom is so soft-hearted, feels so bad for this guy who's been in a coffin for so long that he lets him off. And then with a little bit of Vienna sausage energy, he's almost able to kill them all. But luckily, Tom is hero. And quick thinking here, by the way, right? Where he is able to, he's like, oh my God, we're crossing that boundary line. It's going to kill Wick potentially. So he like throws the life preserver to Wick, kicks him off the boat. And then, of course, lays on top of the coffin until he is able to ensure that they're beyond the boundary line. Just like something out of a 1960s horror film, he immediately turns to bones, like instantaneously. And like he describes him, he goes, what happened when he rescues Wick? He says, what happened to him? He goes, it's nothing but ribs and Vienna sausages.
I think Vienna sausages, what else? Also sausages, I say. But anyway, they should sponsor your show here because we love Vienna sausages, by the way. I think they're really good. Fry them up with
That's a perfect segue to our advertisement for, no, just
kidding. Vienna sausages.
By the way, there's been a lot of references to other things in this show, like episode 1, of course, a reference to John Carpenter's film, The Fog, and maybe The Mist from Stephen King, although that's a very different kind of fog. I think it's more closely aligned with the reanimated corpses of The Fog than it is to The Mist. And, you can see like The Shining, a little bit of The Shining when he ends up in the hotel. There's definitely like when at the book depository, by the way, there's a Stephen King book that gets donated. So there's like definitely Stephen King references, although they're not all references. Of course, we have the scary clown, which makes you think about it also in that hotel episode. So there's been and of course the inaugural swim and having everybody there makes you think about Jaws, even though of course Jaws is not supernatural. But this episode has an overt Jaws reference, specifically when not only they're on the boat in the middle of the night, but think about in the Jaws movie where what's his name? Brody, the old boat captain who's riding them out to try to kill the shark. He tells this story about all these soldiers that in the middle of the night, the Indianapolis boat sank and they were in the water and the sharks were there eating them one at a time all night long. And by the time the morning came around, there was only this handful of survivors, which is a true story, by the way. But you see that Wick is like the old crotchety boat captain here. And he's telling the story of like, I tried to go beyond those barriers once. And Jerry's brother, by the way, apparently we've seen earlier that he had been dating Jerry. There was something between them. But apparently he was out there with Jerry's brother. Jerry's brother died and he had this guilt forever, and which ended their relationship since this is probably like high school days when this happened. But I love this detail, by the way. It's something very Lovecraftian as well, that he's like these tentacled monster was in the water and it was trying to grab his leg and he was swimming away. And he only noticed at the end that he was actually swimming away. It wasn't a tentacle. It was Jerry's brother that was trying to reach for him. And he let him drown and he saved himself. And he has that guilt still.
That is depressing.
But definitely, like I said, it's like paralleling that bonding ritual on the boat that we saw in Jaws as well. And outside of the water, two big things happen, of course. One is, Patricia in the middle of all that gets arrested by Bashir. Bashir is like, first of all, he's like, if you have anything to tell me now, you have to tell me. Apparently, while all this stuff is happening on the boat, we cut back and we realize that she has told him everything that's happened. And he's like, I don't believe most of what you're saying. And honestly, I don't care. I am just going to quit this job and get the hell off this island with my wife. So
I'm with him.
Understandable. And he was not born on the island. He came here for the job. So unless his wife is an island person, which that's what I'm curious about. Maybe she's at risk and maybe that will trap him there on the island. Because I can't imagine he's actually going to leave. Maybe he'll try to leave and won't be able to. But he physically can leave without dying, even with this curse, supposedly. But maybe his wife can't leave. That's the big question.
Interesting. Or maybe he won't leave because he's like really emotionally tied to these people. Although it does look like he's ready to go.
Well, I mean, I think his intention is to go. But you make a good point, though. Imagine he's like, I'm giving my 1 week's notice, which he says here. First of all, the rest of the show might all take place within a week, considering how things are accelerating. So it might be before he actually quits. So maybe that's where the show ends, at him leaving. But it could be the other thing, like you said, he can make this revelation that something really bad is happening, whether it's supernatural or not. Even if he doesn't believe it, he knows something really, really bad is going to happen. And then is he really going to abandon these people when he seems to be the only one that is, not affected? Because, for example, this plague that they described is very much like the guy who came back from the ship. Their eyes turn white and they become like zombies, basically. And I think it's kind of what we saw in the Patricia episode, where we saw those people with their jaws open and their eyes white when we saw them in the mirror. And that's probably maybe the condition they go into. But he's not an island denizen, right? So if he's the only one who's unaffected, he may have to step up and do something. Or one of the few. I mean, I assume there's other people there that are not island born, but there might be a handful of them by the end of the season. So Patricia, again, trying to do the right thing here and loop in Bashir. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how he ties into the ending. I can't imagine he actually leaves the island. Like I said, he has to be there to rescue it. And maybe I've come up on it. Like if the plague starts happening, if the people were dying on the island originally or getting infected with this plague condition because the demon wasn't being fed, and we've heard the bell ring, and if the priest killed himself because he was unwilling to do what needed to happen, and Tom doesn't actually know that, although I think he's had a conversation now with the demon, although he might have been high at the time, but maybe the memory of it will come back. And if they're not going to do that, then, and I doubt they will, then the island, I think the plague is going to start happening again on the island. And then someone's got to have to, save them all. And Bashir seems to be a good candidate. Like I said, there's probably other people who would be unaffected who weren't born on the island. But it's probably the minority of the population, like the visitors, and a handful of other people who've moved there over their lifetime.
I still feel like the guy they didn't get rid of the skeleton guy.
That's interesting. I mean, he could come back. I don't think he's interesting enough to come back. But I think what you're about to say is that, like who's doing the bad things on the island? It wasn't him. He was buried underground, right? But we do know that like the doors now on the Hellmouth are metal doors. So that's been upgraded. So there are people who have been maintaining and feeding this demon. So it's not like it's just him communing with the demon. There are people on this island that are probably in cahoots with the demon. And we've probably met them, by the way.
But at the end of the scene also is when he's like, oh, did you check the coffin? Or he says something like that. And they're kind of chuckling about it. I feel like it's not over. Plus the fact that his wrinkly, greenish skin kind of reminds me of mermaids for some reason. This is just in my brain. I'm like, kind of like a mermaid man.
But I think we would know quickly as far as the show goes, I think we'll know, you might be right, but I think we'll know pretty quickly. If they return to shore and they look inside the coffin and the bones are gone, then maybe he somehow reconstituted himself or something. But I think because if they come back and it's the skeleton's still in there, I think his part of the story.
But there's that water woman who could probably save him.
I think they killed the water woman.
Did they? I don't know. Maybe they did.
I think she would have come back. I think they would have come back for Tom again if, like, the next night, if he was still marked. So maybe they've just been so active that she hasn't been able to catch up to them because they're always moving around recently. But he was out in water, but he wasn't alone. So maybe just because he hasn't been alone, maybe she's still out there and she can come back for him again.
Interesting. We are so interesting with our theories.
Lots of theories.
Lots of theories.
Okay, one more side story, of course, is the fact that the big reveal here, which I kind of suspected for a while now, but it's even more depressing than that. When I originally suspected that we were going to find out that Tom's wife was not dead. And then when we saw that flashback at the end of episode 5, and we see that she was about to give birth, they had left the island, she suddenly went blind, like these people do when they are hit with this curse. And then the doctor says, the baby's fine and she's not okay, but she'll get better, he says, right? And I was like, oh, maybe she never got better. Maybe she was just like a vegetable. But then we see these pictures where she was there with her son, and his son is older now. He's like, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old. So we still don't even know. Do you have a speculate on, if you want to speculate on this, is she out there like in some insane asylum, or did she commit suicide at some point along the way and she actually is dead? I think it would be more disturbing and more of a betrayal by Tom if she's still out there and he's just like, I don't want you to visit her.
Oh, I never thought of that he could be the reason that she's not involved with the kid.
Right.
Maybe because what's he even doing on this island? Why would you go back there? Exactly. Maybe she's still there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. When he's on the boat in that moment of flashback, he starts saying, turn the boat around. And I'm like, did they actually turn the ferry around, or did he go to the mainland And then when we see the doctor saying the baby's born and he's healthy and yada, yada, was that actually at hospital that we're seeing on the mainland? So she had the baby on the mainland. But if that's the case, if the baby was born on the mainland, then he can actually leave the island. And then, like you mentioned, I think if he could get off the island with his son, he would have done so. So I think his son was born on the island. They did turn around. The son was born on the island, and he's terrified that the son has this curse.
And she would still be on the island. Probably they turned the boat around.
Yes.
She gave birth on the island in their hospital, I guess. And then I guess she was with him for a few years from the pictures like you were talking about. She would still have to be on the island.
There's a couple of things there. In the picture, we see her like with the baby and it's like in the hospital, but then we see her with the child older and it looks like they're in a house. But it is still possible that she's like never came out of this vegetative state. You could imagine they went from the hospital, they took her from the hospital to be in the house with them for a visit or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. But
it would be
interesting if she's still there.
In the picture, she's just kind of looking at nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's possible. And maybe that's why he went back to the island, because he feels like he needs to be near her. He's responsible for her in this way. Because why would you go back to this island?
But ever? also if the son was born there and you believe this curse, his son can't leave. He can't leave and kill his son.
That's true. He could just be there in fear.
But he can leave the island. That's the thing, is because remember, in his backstory, his dad and mom divorced. He was born on the mainland. The dad, I think, wanted to live on the island, went back. The mom did not. But Tom was born off the island and then basically would go and spend summers with his dad on the island. So that's why he has this relationship with the people there. But he's only a part-timer, which is part of the reason everybody kind of treats him like an outsider. He's been there the whole time, but he's not really an island person. And by the way, he can leave, which other people cannot do.
I guess we shall see. But these are interesting thoughts that I hadn't even thought about because I was really focused on the other stuff we were talking about. But yeah, that's interesting about the mother.
Do you think this girl supposedly from Boston is part of this demonic cult, that she's like getting him to open that box? Or do you think she's just like a mischievous teenager who's kind of bored? She even says, oh man, I thought this was going to be like really juicy. It's just kind of depressing. So is she just some jaded kid? Or do you think there's more to her involvement here in this revelation?
Most likely she's just a jaded kid. I mean, in my opinion, only because like she does not seem overly invested in anything else, just kind of like hanging out, smoking pot. I don't know. I don't feel like she's like a very important character that would be drawn in later as someone who has a lot to do with the plot.
One more Easter egg to shout out here, by the way. The movie they're watching, I have not seen this, but I always am curious when there's like a needle drop or there's an interesting name. And by the way, I haven't even gotten into the names on the show, but all these names have like references to other things, but maybe I'll do that in a separate conversation. But whenever there's a movie or music, I always kind of research it because there's usually some kind of clue to something in the plot. And these kids are watching a British movie called City of the Dead, this black and white movie they're watching, which is from 1960. In America, it was called Horror Hotel, importantly. And this was the first movie made by Amicus, which was like a competitor to Hammer Films, this kind of 1950s, 1960s British horror films, like all those Dracula films with Christopher Lee, who's in this movie, by the way. But the reason I bring all that up is that the plot of that movie, it starts in a flashback in 1692. The flashback here is 1702, so very similar. It takes place in a Massachusetts fishing town, not an island, but a Massachusetts fishing town. And it turns out that the island is run by a coven of witches who have made a pact with the devil, who have to lure tourists to the hotel and then sacrifice them to have like eternal life and success in this island. So I think that there's a lot of paralleling between that movie and the plot of this film.
Oh, I think you're right, because they have brought up witches before when they were in the museum and they were talking about how they had.
Jerry's like, yeah, we got them all. We killed them all.
Yes. Yes. And then there's that weird torture chair in one of the basements. And yeah, I feel like there's some witchcraft going on around here.
Yeah, that chair is.
What if like this is like a woman power show where it's like the females are really in control doing witchcraft?
I don't know. I think that Warren, well, it could be, maybe it's possible. I was going to say that the Warren character seems to be very important to all of this, but it's possible that the women are actually pulling the strings behind the scenes. I don't know if that's going to be the case though, because we're so late in the show to be changing the mythology up that way. I think that it's primarily the origin of this story is importantly why we have the flashback. It's the idea of Warren meeting this demon, which of course we've seen happen directly to Tom in episode 5, and making this pact with the devil, right? And by the way, Tom doesn't even remember a lot of the stuff that happened while he was tripping. And I do believe that we are going to see those missing scenes, I think, are going to pop up in a later episode. And by the way, I can't wait for that. It's going to be so funny. Every time they jump back to Tom in episode 5, Patricia's like, stop screaming at me, So we don't know what he was yelling at these people. And like, for example, when he's in front of the city committee that has organized there, they're furious at him for whatever he was saying. So I'm like, I can't wait to see what those scenes were. So I think we are going to see them in some kind of, maybe the very next episode, they'll go back a few days and fill in those blanks. But I think that would be comedically really great and maybe reveal some of the things that we didn't see at that time, including whether he made some pact with this demon after they started talking.
That would be amazing, because when I was saying that I'm watching the show and I was just kind of like, I needed more revelations or something. There you go. It's not like a filler episode, not that it was, but sometimes you're watching a show like Breaking Bad, for example, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you realize it was a really important episode, actually. So if you're right, that would be a very important episode.
Yeah, I think that the missing scenes from episode 5 are, and I think it rubbed some people the wrong way, but the fact that every time he cuts away, he like hears something, is like, do you hear something? Do you hear something? And you hear some kind of voice that's kind of like approaching him. Again, listen to this with the atmospheric audio setting on. And then he blacks out, and then he comes back, and everybody's like angrily reacting to whatever he just did. And he has no context for it. He's just afraid of them. But like you mentioned, there's no way that they're going to like cut all that out and then not show it to us at some point in the future. And I think it's going to recontextualize stuff that's happened on the show.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it should be exciting. 3 more episodes to go. Did you have anything else you wanted to shout out? Any not only any theorizing or
about this show?
Yeah, in general. Any other comedic highlights you want to call out?
I mean, the whole thing is pretty funny. And what's good about the show is that you're watching it and you don't understand or you don't realize when the comedy's coming. Because it could be they're just having a normal conversation and then they'll just say something in a way where one word is very funny. Like it's subtle at times. Not all the time, obviously, but there's some very subtle humor in there if you're really paying attention. So this show is the type of show that you really do have to pay attention and understand like what's happening and why it's funny, and to get all those little clues that have made us theorize about what may or may not be going on in the show. You have to pay attention to it, is what I noticed about it. Because I will watch shows where I'm half paying attention and it's totally fine. I know what's going on. I'm following and nothing I missed was important, but that's not the case here.
I have a couple of things I wanted to call out, and maybe if you wanted to interject any of your own, just some comedic bits that I thought were so great. Again, pivoting from the horrific to the comedic. I love when the Warren character, this former mayor of the island, now reanimated, says that he had made a pact with the demon and that he signed it with his own blood, feces, and semen.
Gross.
And then after he says that, he just wipes his finger on his pants.
That is so gross.
That's a great one. The other thing I love
imagine
is that,
how do you do that? Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure. The combination is an
cut
interesting
your
thing.
arm open and then, do other things to have semen. Like, it's just so impossible to imagine.
Another one that these are such throwaway moments. They're so funny. Another one I loved was when Wick is talking about how they found the amulet, the tube that's around his neck, which, by the way, we still haven't read. He said he found this. It's just a piece of paper. So I still haven't seen what's on the paper. I think it might be that weird, very funny, by the way, that little hand print drawing, like a kid's scrawl of tracing someone's fingers. Maybe that's what's on that piece of paper, but I guess we'll see sooner or later. But I love that when Wick goes, we found the thing around his neck, and he takes his Sharpie out to the painting, this like hundreds of year old painting, and he circles it. This one. I'm like, yeah, I think we know. But I'd like to pulling out the Sharpie there.
It's almost like you don't know when it's going to be the next weird scene. And I just love the way they talk. Like, sometimes even in present day, they're talking like they're in the times of old or whatever.
Maybe that's why this guy can understand what he's saying. He picks up the swearing pretty quickly.
Yeah. So it's a good show. I really, really like it. I also like the decor. There's some really good wallpaper going on in these old houses, like that old hotel that everyone's terrified of sleeping in.
And of course, very importantly to that hotel, can't forget that the very last shot of this whole entire thing, very funny scene where the roller bag goes down the stairs. Yes. Do not let your roller bag roll down the stairs accidentally. But of course, that's the little comedic beat. But more importantly is the camera zooming in, I should say, all the way to that painting, and not the painting in total, but the girl drowning in the water. What happened to that girl? I think we're going to find out.
But there's a hand also. There's a hand in the painting reaching out to her with what looks like a paddle.
Really? No, yes. I think there's someone in the boat, and then she's off to the side. But maybe there's someone reaching out to her.
There's a hand, and go to that and look it up, because I'm on it right now. I'm looking at it as we speak about it. When you're looking at the girl in the water, I guess if you're facing the TV, the right side, there is a hand holding a paddle. And what she's doing is not waving for help. She's reaching for this paddle.
I'm looking at a screenshot.
Do you see the hand?
Oh, here we am. I see her reaching out. I don't see oh, maybe you're right. Yeah, all the way to like a little up. Maybe there is something reaching out to her. Yeah, good point.
It's a hand. I see a thumb. I see all the fingers. I'm on a very, pretty impressive television as I tell you about this.
My screen is very small, so maybe I have to look at it on a bigger screen. But I do see what you're talking about. There's something like there reaching down to her. Yes.
Yep. So it's a hand holding what I think is a paddle, reaching down to her, and she is looking at the paddle and trying to grab for it.
Interesting. So yeah, maybe somebody was there, someone was following them and returned her to shore. Interesting.
Maybe.
And who is that? Who's that girl, and who rescued her?
Right. And I like that they zoom in at the end, because every time you look at this picture, you don't see the detail of the hand. It's almost like hard to see, because it looks
like off the very, very edge of the frame. I'm curious, by the way, if someone will see this painting and then take it out of the frame, right? Because it's framed. So if you can see a little bit of detail there, there's more detail beyond the edge of that frame, right? So I'm curious.
That would be amazing.
If there's some more detail there, we'll see very soon. So very cool. I think this show, my gut instinct is this show is getting very popular. So we will be continuing to follow it for the next 3 weeks. And by the way, I think you were telling me to watch this. I watched the first episode, also Apple TV related. I watched the first episode of Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed. And I really did not like the pilot of the episode, even though 2 episodes were available. I stopped after episode 1. But last night, I watched episode 2 and 3. And I am still not sure whether I think this is a good show or not. But Maslany is very good in the role. And the twist in episode 2, and I'm not going to spoil it here, but that there's this other famous actor now on the show as an antagonist. was really interesting. So, and also the fact that this girl just has every episode that the tension just gets worse and worse for her. So I think that is an interesting structure to the show. So I'm more committed to it now than I was after the pilot, for sure.
I like it a lot. So you should keep watching. Yeah, keep watching.
And I mean, we have one of if this character is actually dead, I don't think she is a particular character on the show. I'm not going to name it in case people are behind, but that would be a real shock. But I have a feeling she has survived this attack, but it's only going to thicken the mystery as far as everybody around as to what is happening.
I think it's good, like really good.
All right. So we'll see. I'll see if I'll stick to it the whole way through, but maybe something else to watch this summer. We'll see if it stays good. I'll stick to it. Anything else you want to recommend?
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk about the movie that you guys just talked about, how great it was, Obsession. So, but yes, everyone go see Obsession. I told all the landscapers yesterday to go see Obsession. Some of them didn't even know about it yet. And I had to explain it to them and they all went to see it. They said they were going that night when they were done with my lawn.
Not everybody's as into movies as we are.
Oh no, they were really psyched about it after, I made them watch a trailer. They're like, oh, that looks so good.
Don't distract them. They got to get their work done, for God's sakes.
Anyway, I think I improved their life for, yesterday anyway, because that is a really good movie. I feel like my life was improved after seeing that. I said, hey, I haven't seen a horror movie this good in like a decade at least, for real.
Wow.
You might disagree with me, but yes, I was like blown away.
Interesting. I'm not that high on it, but there is a pretty fascinating, but still excellent film, by the way. When I say I'm not as high on it, not the best horror film I saw in a decade. Like Red Rooms, for example, was like my favorite film.
Oh, that was good. That was so good too. Yes. Okay,
but this might be this one might be
as Red Rooms.
This could be in my top 10 at the end of the year for sure. But the question I had for you was really fascinating that we're now seeing multiple people become horror stars from their YouTube content. This kid, of course, started on YouTube. But this weekend, are you and Carlos planning to go see Backrooms? This movie's is supposed to open between $40 and $45 million over this weekend. And also a YouTube sensation. The kid who made the first Backrooms video made the first video when he was 14 years old, shot this movie when he was 19 years old. And it's probably going to open at around $45 million this weekend, just in the US. Worldwide, it's going to be even bigger.
Oh, yeah, I'm totally interested. Like, I most likely will see it this weekend.
It'll be sold out shows, I'd assume. By the way, all the kids want to go see this, of course, not only because of this internet sensation, but my daughter, who is too young to have even seen these short films, so many of these like Roblox games, they have these like liminal spaces where you like find a niche in a wall and then you go into another room and into another room. And then you have to like hide in the middle of the night so that the demons don't get you. And then when the sun rises again, you have to go and you explore some more and you find supplies. And anyway, my point is that there's a whole genre of this stuff in these games that these kids play. So I mean, this thing's rated R. I think most of the audience is going to be like 13, 15 years old to 15 years old because these kids grew up playing these games.
The games now are so realistic too.
Well, not like the Roblox games, but I think but yes, the more realistic ones are. But yeah, I think that the games that these kids are playing, these younger kids, most of them are kind of more blocky, Minecrafty. But it is still amazing that these kids, like, this is a huge event for kids of a certain age. Like Darren talked about this, how his daughters are like, oh yeah, everybody knows about Backrooms. Everybody's planning to go see it. And everybody knows about the short film on YouTube. They've all seen it before. And Darren's like, I've never heard of this before. I'm like, I know. It's a generational thing.
We're so old.
We are so old. Exactly. We're no longer 10 and 4.
No, 10 and 4, and neither is she.
Closer to your interpretation of 10 and 4. All right. So yeah, we will keep watching the show and can't wait till we see this in the very short term. Euphoria is wrapping up next week. Are you still watching Euphoria?
I love Euphoria. I love the other, the series better than this last series, but I still love it. It's like watching kinky art.
Right. And we're almost done with Your Friends and Neighbors. And the same week that we wrap up Your Friends and Neighbors, we actually have the premiere of Cape Fear, which I'm very much looking forward to as well.
Me too.
All right, Celia, thank you again for the conversation. And we will talk sooner here on the podcast than.
Definitely.
All right. Have a good
night.
night.
Bye.